ICAC makes arrests over using triad links to manipulate multi-million-dollar projects. Fire alarm sounded during Taipo public hearing. And Latin patriarch will have access to Jerusalem holy site after police stop entry. Good evening. Welcome to TVB News. A joint operation was conducted by the Independent Commission Against Corruption and the police targeting triad infiltration on building maintenance. The operation involved 3 sites with maintenance contracts exceeding $180 million in total. 42 people have been arrested so far. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Sources said one of the targeted sites was Taipo's Fushin estate. Starting from the middle of last year, the Independent Commission Against Corruption received several corruption complaints alleging that a project consultancy firm engaged in corrupt methods to manipulate the project bidding procedure to benefit certain contractors. The anti-graft organization said the consultancy firm for the Fushin estate project secured the consultancy contract at just $800,000, given that the project sum was supposed to be over $160 million. The consultancy firm further contacted potential bidders via the triad through means of bribery and manipulation. ICAC intervention is believed to have halted the dealings from taking place. This as the company used similar methods to infiltrate a building maintenance project on Hong Kong Island involving $20 million 4 years ago. The ICAC found that the registered inspector of the firm was suspected of failing to fulfill his inspection duties and was suspicious of the firm's millions of dollars of expenditures. The consultancy firm is also suspected of receiving bribes. Earlier this year, the firm and the director of the property management company of a residential building in Kowloon were suspected of accepting bribes from a project contractor. ICAC personnel conducted its operation last week, searching some 22 locations, with initial investigations indicating several companies being involved with account falsification. Earlier arrests included 10 men aged between 28 and 61, and consisted of staff in the consultancy firm and members of the triad. Subsequent arrests were made at an illegal site operated by the triad, resulting in another 32 arrests. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
Wang Fuk Court residents on Monday continued to testify at the public hearing of the independent committee investigating the Taipo fire. One resident said owners were barred from joining meetings that discussed important issues related to the estate's maintenance. Mimosang reports.
The public hearing resumed at Central City Gallery on Monday morning. Under the guidance of Victor Dose, the independent committee's lead counsel, 7 more Wang Fuk Court residents provided their testimony. Mr. Ip, a one-time house resident, used to attend the estate's meetings with his wife, who died in the blaze. He recalled witnessing some people put a large number of proxy votes from unknown sources into the voting boxes during an owners' corporation meeting. Ip stopped going to those meetings in early 2024 after he was prevented from entering. He said it was pointless for him to join anymore because owners could not make a difference on the matter. Ip also mentioned that he had filed a complaint about issues in the Wang Fuk Court's construction contract with the Urban Renewal Authority last February. But the URA said the body only handled subsidy-related issues and asked Ip to find the project's consultant instead. Wangji House resident Mr. So's parents passed away in the fire. So said his family had worried about the flammable foam boards used to shield the windows, so he made complaints to the Fire Services Department. In an audio between So and the FSD, the department replied that it didn't have any regulation for window materials. The hearing was disrupted at around 11:30 a.m. when the City Gallery's fire alarms went off. Everyone was evacuated from the site while firefighters arrived to investigate. The hearing resumed about 30 minutes later. Justice David Look, the committee's chairman, said the incident shows the importance of fire alarms. He lamented that if only the alarms had gone off at Wang Fuk Court on the day of the fire, things would have turned out much better. Momos 9, TVB News.
Speaking on the condition of Wang Fuk Court's fire safety systems, local residents testified that they only received a single notice earlier last year about the systems being shut down. This as the contractor responsible for the condition for the system said it found the master switches of all the alarm systems in all Wang Fuk Court buildings had been turned off a week before the tragic fire. Timothy Lee reports.
Members of the independent committee in relation to the Wang Fuk Court fire noted that the malfunctioning of almost all fire safety systems on site was a result of human error. Mr. Lo, a former resident of Wang Tai House, said he couldn't hear the fire alarm at the time of the fire. He recalled receiving a notification from the building's management and incorporated owners in April last year that indicated the shutdown of the fire safety system. Mr. Lo said he found the measure to be problematic and later discovered that there was no fire safety system on the floor of his unit. Senior counsel Victor Dawes, the lead lawyer for the committee, asked whether Lo received other notifications of the system shutdown, which lasted from the 7th to 20th of April last year, to which Lo said he only received one. A former resident of Wang Kin House said he tried to use the fire hose during the blaze, but was surprised that there was no water inside the system. Another man who lived in the same building echoed the statement. This, as an electrician who worked on the housing estate's fire safety system, said there were no structural issues with the building's water tanks during an annual check performed between the 24th and 26th of March last year. However, he found the master switches for the fire safety systems of all 8 Wang Fuk Court buildings were turned off 1 week before the fire. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The State Council has appointed retired civil servant Janice Tse as the new Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, succeeding Eric Tsang, who resigned 2 months ago. Chief Executive John Lee stressed that her top priority will be the formulation of the city's first 5-year plan. Samantha Lee reports.
Meeting the press with Janice Tse, Chief Executive John Lee noted that the decision was made after considering several candidates. He said Tse is a veteran administrative officer with 38 years of government experience. He believes she can fulfill the responsibility of crafting Hong Kong's 5-year plan under the executive-led system. Witnessed by the city leader, the newly appointed Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs took the oath of office. The 61-year-old joined the government in 1987 and moved to the administrative grade the following year. Her past roles include Deputy Secretary for Food and Health, as well as Director of Home Affairs. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she supervised the city's water sewage surveillance program. She later served as Permanent Secretary for Environmental and Ecology, where she handled the waste charging scheme. However, she had no prior experience specifically related to the work of the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau. She was asked how her previous work prepared for her new role, especially after having retired in January 2025, and she had this to say.
I have been watching closely what's happening in Hong Kong, as my heart is so closely attached to Hong Kong. And my experience in the government, in liaison with various sectors, the Legislative Council, the other sectors, and to listen to their views in formulating major policy and in the implementation of various policy measures would definitely be the necessary skills.
Meanwhile, she was dubbed the Queen of Properties for holding 18 properties and 9 car parks. She pointed to the government's transparent declaration system, where she would disclose her interests up to date. When asked if her tenure would see a push for the same-sex partner bill in order to fulfill a court mandate in 2023, Janice Tse remained tight-lipped. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
US President Donald Trump said many targets had been destroyed in Iran and that he was confident of a regime change. Trump also raised the idea of US forces seizing Iran's Karg Island, its main oil terminal in the Persian Gulf. Iran said its forces were prepared to confront a US ground incursion. This as the country and Israel continue to strike each other with missiles. Daniel Rowell tells us more.
US President Donald Trump said many targets had been destroyed in Iran and he was confident of a regime change. Trump also said Iran had agreed to allow 20 ships carrying oil through the Strait of Hormuz starting Monday morning and continuing over the next few days out of a sign of respect. Trump also responded to a question about Iran's stance on the 15-point ceasefire plan the US has proposed.
And we will probably, I think we'll make a deal with them, pretty sure. whether it's possible we won't. But we've had regime change, if you look already, because the one regime was decimated, destroyed, they're all dead. The next regime is mostly dead. And the third regime, we're dealing with different people than anybody's dealt with before. It's a whole different group of people. So I would consider that regime change. And frankly, they've been very reasonable. So I think we've had regime change. Yeah, they came back on the 15-point plan. They gave us most of the points. Why wouldn't they?
Trump also raised the idea of US forces seizing Iran's Karg Island, its main oil terminal in the Persian Gulf. Maybe we take Karg Island, maybe we don't. We have a lot of options, Trump told the Financial Times in an interview Monday. Trump's comments come as Iran's Joint Command spokesperson warned against any potential US ground operation on Iranian soil. In a video address, Lieutenant Colonel Ebrahim Zolfagari said Iranian forces were prepared to confront a US ground incursion. Zolfagari said US President Trump beats the drum of a threat in the morning and retreats from it by the evening of the same day. And one moment he speaks of negotiations, and shortly afterwards he decides to manage the war. He said this unbalanced and deceitful individual has inflicted extensive damage on the people of the United States, Europe and countries around the world, especially the countries of West Asia. The tensions continue to mount as Pakistan's foreign minister said Islamabad will soon host talks between the US and Iran. Iran's energy ministry said power was cut in Tehran and Alborz provinces after attacks on electricity facilities. The state media reports did not say who attacked. Iran's Deputy Minister of Energy, Mustafa Rajabi Mashhadi, said he estimated the Tehran power grid will gradually return and customers will be relieved of the outage. Late on Sunday, Israel's military said over the past 24 hours, its fighter jets had dropped more than 120 munitions in Tehran, targeting sites used for weapons research, development and production. Meanwhile, missile fragments that fell in a factory outside the southern Israeli city of Beersheba set a pesticide tank on fire, according to Israel's Fire and Rescue, sending black plumes of smoke and billowing flames high into the air. Donor TV News.
Israeli police has prevented 2 Syrian Roman Catholic leaders from entering the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem to celebrate Mass of Palm Sunday for the first time in centuries. The Latin Patriarch in Jerusalem, Cardinal Pierbattista Pizzaballa, said in a statement on Sunday that he and Father Francesco Yerbo were stopped en route and compelled to turn back while proceeding to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, one of the most important sites in Christianity. He has called the police's decision a grave precedent and disregards the sensibilities of billions of people around the world who, during this week, look to Jerusalem. The church, built on what is believed as the site of Jesus' crucifixion, burial and resurrection, remains closed as Jerusalem has come under frequent Iranian fire. The traditional Palm Sunday procession has already been cancelled. Pizzaballa later held a peace prayer ceremony at the Dominus Flevit Shrine on the Mount of Olives and celebrated Mass in the St. Saviour's Monastery, which is near an underground music school that is regarded as a safe shelter place by Israeli military.
Brothers and sisters, we are gathered here today in front of Jerusalem in a very complicated situation we are living in. But in this moment, in front of your city, Jerusalem, we want to bring together with Jesus. We want to enter within in Jerusalem and to learn once again how to navigate safely and remain always a community that wants to build partnership, friendship, communion and fraternity among our lives.
His spokesman noted on Sunday morning the Patriarch did inform the police that they were supposed to celebrate Mass in private behind closed doors. Still, despite the communication, the police insisted on prohibiting them from entering the basilica.
We did take the measures to prevent any problems and any risk to the people, to the faithful, but still to have the heads of churches not being able to celebrate one of the most sacred days of the year in the Holy Sepulchre, in the most sacred place for Christians, is something unheard of.
The spokesman added the church leaders are still waiting for answers to see what happened and why it happened. The police's restriction has drawn criticism from the Italian government, which is planning to summon the Israeli ambassador in Rome. Following widespread backlash over Sunday's incident, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated there was no malicious intent whatsoever in the ban, saying he has asked relevant authorities early Monday to give the heads of the church full and immediate access. Meanwhile, in the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV dedicated his Palm Sunday homily to insist that God is the King of Peace, calling the conflict between Israel, the US and Iran atrocious. He drew the church's attention to the plight of Christians around the world, especially in the Middle East. He said they cannot forget how many people today are participating in the real way in Christ's suffering. In many cases, they cannot live fully the rights of these holy days.
Ai cristiani del Medio Oriente.
The pontiff also offered prayers to support those wounded by war to open concrete paths of reconciliation and peace. Still ahead, displaced Lebanese angry with Israeli invaders. Ukrainian President meets Jordanian King. And Hong Kong electric cars selling like hotcakes just before favourable buying terms end. Welcome back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that his country's armed forces will widen their invasion of southern Lebanon. People in Lebanon displaced by the ongoing fighting condemned the announcement. Meanwhile, mourners gathered in the south of Beirut to bury 3 journalists killed by an Israeli airstrike the day before while covering the ongoing Israel-Hezbollah war. Daniel Rao has details.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced his country's armed forces will widen their invasion of southern Lebanon. Netanyahu said Israel would expand what he called the existing security strip as its forces look to seize control of some 30 kilometers north of the border and deny Lebanese residents the opportunity to return. People in Lebanon displaced by the ongoing fighting between Israel and Hezbollah condemned Netanyahu's announcement. Some called Israel an expansionist state. Over 1 million Lebanese people have been displaced in the latest war between Israel and Hezbollah, sheltering in public schools or in tents pitched on the side of the road. Israel says its aim is to protect the country from Hezbollah rocket attacks. Displaced Lebanese people fear this invasion would be a pretext to a new occupation, but some are still hopeful they will return home. The death toll in Lebanon has exceeded 1,200 people in the ongoing war between Israel and Hezbollah. Under an intermittent downpour, mourners gathered in Shuaifat in the south of Beirut to bury 3 journalists killed by an Israeli airstrike the day before, while covering the war.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Jordan on Sunday as he continued his tour of the Middle East. Jordan's King Abdullah II hosted the Ukrainian leader, who claimed in his social media that important meetings lay ahead. Zelensky traveled to Oman on the back of stops in Qatar, the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Kiev is offering its drone expertise to help governments blunt Iranian attacks during the war in the Middle East. The Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and President Xi Jinping have extended invitation to chairperson of the Chinese Kuomintang Party, Chen Liwen, to visit the mainland from April the 7th to 12th. Last October, former lawmaker Chen Liwen won election as the leader of the Kuomintang, Taiwan's largest opposition party, and has signaled a swing towards closer ties with Beijing. The Kuomintang said in a statement on Monday that Chen was grateful for the invitation and had gladly accepted it. State-run Xinhua News Agency reported that Xi is invited to visit Beijing, Shanghai, and the eastern province of Jiangsu. Chen told reporters in Taipei that they hope it will mark the beginning of the new spring of the two sides of the Taiwan Strait, which she says is the first step for them to extend kindness and forge mutual trust. The head of the Taiwan Work Office of the CPC Central Committee said the party and the Kuomintang will carry out communication regarding the visit to make proper arrangements. The electric vehicle one-for-one replacement scheme ends tomorrow. A car dealer said that sales had surged recently as many residents rushed to buy cars before the deadline. Samantha Lee has more.
The ongoing conflict in the Middle East has lasted for almost a month, causing international oil prices to rise. In Hong Kong, fuel prices have surpassed $32 per litre, which is an increase of $4 since the war began. Affected by oil prices, the cost of running a fuel-powered car is higher than that of an electric vehicle. Meanwhile, the electric vehicle one-for-one replacement scheme ends Tuesday. The first registration tax concessions for private electric cars also concludes on the same day. At a vehicle showroom in Hong Kong, some residents came to make a purchase before the favorable terms are gone. Mr. Chen said fuel is pricey nowadays, so he came to look for a new electric vehicle. Car dealer Eric Wang said they sold 1,000 cars this month. That was half of a typical full year's performance.
Customers usually take 45 minutes to 2 hours to make a purchase, but now they just walk in and close a deal within 10 minutes. Under the government policy, applicants are still eligible for the tax concession if they buy from available stock before March 31st. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.